All right. So what I'm trying to do in this particular recording is to show you guys how to use the command line interface and all the basics of using the command line interface. What you're seeing here is a virtual machine because I usually do not use Windows myself. I can do a separate presentation for people using Mac OS and Linux, or I would more likely just kind of combine the two presentations into one. All right, so the first thing I want to do is to show you the file interface, or I shouldn't say file interface, but the file browser, where you can actually check out all your files. So we can go to, just scrolling down here. There's usually a file browser of some kind in Windows. And let me see. All right, so because I want to show you, how you can get to the files, using the graphical user interface. It's called the File Explorer. There we go. All right, so this is an interface that you should be used to, because that's how you normally navigate around the file system on a Windows machine. So what we'll do is we're going to go to this PC. And presented all of these options here, the best way to really understand the file system is not to use documents and downloads, even though these are very handy to use, but to really understand how files are organized. I would suggest to use that you use the C colon thing at the end or the bottom of this PC. And now we're looking at folders and whatnot. So under users, okay, are the folders that are specific to each particular user. So in this case, I signed in using my WID. So I am W00068887. And then under there, I would find the usual folders that you normally find in what we call the home folder. So this is the home folder. The home folder is the parent folder that contains everything that is specific to a particular user. And in Windows, in later versions of Windows, it is under the subfolder of users and then under here. So once I get here, I can say, let me create a new folder for the class CISP310. So I can now right click and go to new and specify folder. And it creates a new folder without asking me what name I want to use. That's okay. I can always rename it here. So I'll just call this, CISP310, like so. All right. So the next thing I want to do is to get all the resources that I need in order to get the tool that we want to use in class. So to do that, I need to go to the browser and sign in to the drive and so on and so forth. So this is going to take a little bit of time, considering how slow the browser is. The browser is slow probably because of a few reasons. One, it is running as a virtual machine, and two, the client is web-based, so it's using HTTP to kind of mirror the image back, and you can see everything is really kind of super slow. I'm recording this using the cloud option in not Canvas, but in Zoom, but that doesn't help either because I'm using the same network connection to also send back a lot, the video content to be recorded. All right, so let's go to sso.los-rios. So this way I can sign in, and to U does not work. Okay, got to have only one single U. There we go. And there we go. And of course, it wants to double check that I am who I am. So we'll say send me a push. And all right, so where's the notification? There we go. All right. So now we're in. We now go to I can go to Google Drive itself because I own that shared folder. So let me I can just go to Canvas, because I want to make this more resemble what you have to do. And obviously you can fast forward through this video until you get to the point where you say, okay, this part seems to be relevant to what I do or what I need to do. So let me scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, it's really slow. There we go. And when I get into the class, I'm going to switch to student view. Right there. And I'm gonna click this box away because I can't really update the browser. All right, so this is basically what you normally see. And all the files that I want to share with you, I shouldn't say all, but most of the files I want to share with you can be found in the shared folder. So you click that. And when we get here, I believe the jar file is already here. So just have to scroll down a little bit, click away the add until we get to logisim310.jar. And then we click the little download icon here. It's going to take a little bit of time, just because it's a pretty large file because it includes all the source files as well. So at some point, it's going to let us, download the file. And when it does download, because I have not configured this particular browser, so it's going to download the file into the downloads folder, which I am not going to mess around. So we'll just keep it over there. All right. So now we can go back to the File Explorer, and then we can now switch to downloads, and just to make sure that file is already here. All right, so very good. Now we can check, we can start a CMD or a command line interface. So just type, CMD. The first prompt is fine. You don't have to run it. In fact, I do not recommend running this as administrator. Just so a simple click should be fine, like so. And the first thing I want to do is to see whether Java is installed here or not. So it looks like it's already installed, so I don't have to install anything here. But the main point of this particular video is to show you how to use the command line interface. So the main concept here, the first concept we have to learn is the current working directory. So this is the command prompt. When you see this thing here and see a blinking cursor, it basically means the command line interface is ready to take your typing as the command, so that it knows what you want to do. So at this point, it's also using a prompt. This is called the prompt. The prompt is reflecting what is the current working directory. In other words, if you think about each CLI, each command line interface, as a squirrel, okay? I used the example of a squirrel because squirrels live in trees, right? And guess what? Your folder or your file system is a gigantic tree. So if I were to go back to the File Explorer, which is this thing here, this is basically, this is a graphical way to show you where you are, okay? So basically, this is where the current working directory is. It is a single point. It is a single folder within the entire folder system that you are quote unquote on at the time. So what you can do here is you can say dir, dir. It shows you the files in the current working directory. So when you say dir, it shows you that we got this new folder here. We also have downloads here. We also have documents here, and so on. But if you say something specific, such as dir, pictures, okay, like that, and you can see how pictures is without anything before that with backslashes. So that means, this is assumed to be a file or it's a folder within the current working directory of C:\users\w00068887. And if I press the enter key, it works fine because there is indeed a subfolder within the current working directory. On the other hand, if I give it a file that does not exist here, but it exists somewhere else, such as logisim 310.jar, then it's going to say file not found because logisim 310.jar is not in the current working directory. Instead, it is living inside a subfolder of the current working directory. So to find that, okay, now we're talking about how to specify a path, which is a way to express where to find a file. So in this case, it is within the subfolder called downloads. Okay, so downloads. And then the backslash is for separating the chain of folders, when you specify the location of a specific file. So in this case, you can see how downloads itself does not have anything before that, no backslash, nothing like that. And that means we are expecting downloads to be a subfolder of the current working directory, which is users \w0006887. And then we can specify the name of the file that we are looking for, which is logisim310.jar. And there it is found. Okay, so this file is close to 22 megabytes, but it is there. Okay. All right. So I'm hoping that now we understand how to specify a path. So now we can use Java. So we can use Java -jar, and then we can specify the full path of the jar file, which in this case it has to include downloads. So you can type down and then, or just DO in this case, and then press the tab key on your keyboard for autocomplete like that. And then we can just type LO and then use tab again to autocomplete. So if you only got one file, just okay, let me show you an example. There's only one file inside downloads as a subfolder. So if I just type tab here, it's going to give me, okay, I guess we do have some other files. But if you press the tab key several times, it will basically go through alternatives, given the hint that you have given to the system. So in this case, it is logisim310.jar. Press the enter key, and it starts. So there we go. All right. So now what I will do is I am just going to pretend that I'm doing the homework assignment and create a circuit. But obviously, I'm not going to create the correct circuit. I'm just going to give you an example of a circuit that I can use for testing purposes. So in that case, I would put an input pin here. I would put an output pin over here, make both of those 8-bit wide, okay? Because I want to make sure that this is going to work with my tester. And then make a wire connecting from one to the other one. So this is definitely not what you're supposed to turn in. And nonetheless, I'm just using this as an example. So what you can now do is to save the file. And when you save the file, in this case, because I have already created the folder of 310, I'm just going to save everything inside the 310 subfolder. And let's see. Oh, I made it right under my home folder, and it's not under documents. So there we go. We have 310, and we'll save the file, and I'll just call this NAND2. Okay, and then save. It is also going to have an extension of .circ automatically. So click save, like so, and it should be saved. All right, so let's go back to the command line interface and see what we can do with it. So you can test the circuit here, but you can also test it inside the command line interface, which I think is a better way to do it, because eventually we'll have designs that are so complex that it makes more sense to test it inside the command line interface. All right, so we're getting back to Canvas because I need to go to the homework assignment to get to the tester. So, and also read some of the instructions related to the tester. So one more scroll and we should be there. All right, there we go. And we do have this companion to lab. This is where the instruction is located. So I click on that. And I basically have to download this file. Okay, wait, hold on a second. There we go. So test driver.circ. Okay, so click on the download symbol to download it, like so. And once again, it is going to download into the downloads folder directly because I did not change the setting of this particular browser to save to a folder that I specified, which is okay. I mean, that's not a big deal. All right, the rest of the instruction, I think I remember most of it, but we'll go ahead and work on this particular setup. All right, so at this point, I don't really need to run Logisim anymore. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to Logisim and then close it. Make sure that I save the file first. The system, I mean, Logisim does double check to make sure the file is safe before it will let you close the tab, close the app here. All right, so we're now back to the command line interface. First thing is I need to know where I can find everything. Okay, so I'm using dir here to first find the file that I downloaded. So I would go to downloads and I'm looking for test driver.circ. Okay, great. It is indeed there. I want to find the file that I just saved. So that one is a little bit, it's not in the downloads folder. I put that into the CISP 310 folder. And I think I call that nan2.circ, and it is there as well. The instruction of the lab says, we would like to put all the files into the same folder. So you can do it using the graphical user interface. You can use File Explorer to do that. Basically, we want to move test driver from the downloads folder into the CISP 310 folder. But since I want to explain the command line interface, I'm going to do it using the command line interface. The command to copy a file, not surprisingly, is copy. If you're using Mac OS or if you're using Linux, it is CP and not COPY, but they do the same thing. So I need to now specify where I can find the original file, and then I need to specify where I want to copy that file to. So where I can find the original file is under downloads, and then the backslash, and then test driver.circ. Where I want to put it is inside the CISP 310 folder. And since I do not intend to change the name of the file, this should be fine. So I press the Enter key, and the file is now copied. And to make things a little bit easier for myself, it is better to move the command line interface to the folder where the files are located instead of re-specifying the path all the time. I will show you the difference. So at this point, if I want to test the circuit using the command line interface, there are a few things I need to do first, okay? Because the file name, which is nan2.circ, is not what test driver is expecting. It's expecting the file to be named reference.circ. So instead of copy, well, I should probably do a copy too. So I'm now copying CISP 310 backslash nan2.circ, which is the file that we just created in Logisim. And now I'm copying it to a clone, a copy that is called reference.circ. You can see in this particular case, the copy command has to specify CISP 310 in both cases, because nan2.circ and also the new file reference.circ are not supposed to be in the current working directory, which is users \w 0006887. They're supposed to be inside the subfolder of CISP 310, which is a subfolder of the current working directory. So I press the Enter key. It's all done. So now I can try to work on this using Logisim. So this time I'm using java-jar, and Logisim 310.jar is still inside the downloads folder. So I have to specify to go to the subfolder downloads from the current working directory like this, and then do a backslash. It's called Logisim 310.jar. And now I provide the path to the test circuit, the test driver, excuse me. Now we have to supply the path to the test driver file. which is also in downloads here, but I also have a copy in CISP 310. So now it specifies CISP 310, which is a subfolder of the current working directory, and therefore there are no backslashes before CISP 310 because it is a subfolder of the current working directory. And then we just specify the test driver like that. Now, if I just do something like this, it's going to open up Logisim 310 with test driver, in the GUI mode, which is okay. Okay, we can give it a try first. So we press the enter key, and it starts off Logisim exactly like last time, except this time it also opens up, the test driver circuit. And in this case, because I actually did not, complete the homework assignment, the test driver is obviously not going to work the way it's supposed to. And even resizing the window is a it's problematic because, that has to do with, I think, the speed of the virtual machine. So if I were to resize this, there we go. It's just, harder because, it takes a long time for that thing to react. So in this case, data in and data out is definitely not what the circuit is supposed to do. So if you do the clocking of this thing here, so that means I need to change this clock here. So even if I clock it through, it's just mirroring. Okay, this is just mirroring data into data out, which is not what your circuit is supposed to do. But that's okay because I'm just making sure that everything is in place correctly. So I'm going to get out of Logisim here, okay, because this is not what I want you guys to do. Because what I want you guys to do is to do this using the command line interface, where it will basically go through all the test cases, so you can basically tell whether your circuit is working or not from a single glance to into the command line interface. So to do that, we have a few more things to type, which is the first one is -tty table. So what this is doing is telling Logisim not to use the GUI mode, and instead it's going to use the command line interface mode. And then when we press the enter key, it will automatically run the test circuit using reference.circ as the actual circuit being tested, and it will tell you that if this is the input, this is the output. If this is the input, this is the output, and so on. Which is definitely incorrect because in the homework assignment, I also tell you what you're supposed to be seeing, but this is incorrect. But that's because I actually did not give you the correct circuit to begin with. Excuse me. All right, so I am hoping this explains things on from the Windows perspective. So what you need to do if you still want more resources, you can look up how a file path is specified in Windows. So I'm going to switch gear to also talk about Linux and also Mac OS. They are similar enough that I probably only need to talk about one because the other one is going to be pretty close. So I'm just switching to a command line interface that is of the right size, so I can put it into the window that is being recorded. Okay, so I'm going to use this one here. All right, so the way we specify a path is a little bit different in Linux. For the most part, we just turn the backslash into a / Oh, there's one more thing. Okay, when you use Windows, most people like to create files or folders with a space in it. That is not a good idea, okay? So you want to make sure that most of the files that you use or most of the folders that you use do not have a space in it. What happens if you do? Okay, well, it's not the end of the world. It is just a little bit inconvenient. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. You can rename the file in the command line interface. I believe the command is just REN for rename. So now I can rename CISP 310 to CISP space 310. So if a folder or file has a space in it, you need to use double quotes to quote the entire path, just so that the command line interface understands the space is not separating components on the command, Instead, it is actually a part of the folder or the file. All right, so let's take that, and we want to do a dir just to make sure the R with single R, and we can now see CISP310 has a space in it. So now if I want to go back, okay, using up arrow, you can go back to previous commands. So if I want to run this again, I can't just put a space in here, because what this is going to do is the command line interface will interpret CISP as one thing, and it will interpret 310 / test_driver.circ as the other thing. So what you need to do in this case is to put the entire file path in double quotes, like so. And then the program should work as usual. So there you go. All right, so getting back to the command line interface using Linux. And macOS is very similar. So if it works here, it should also work in macOS. First thing is to double check that Java is installed. So it is indeed installed. So now I can basically repeat the same thing, java-jar. And now I need to specify where to find logisim310.jar. So the way I put this is inside my documents folder. There's a subfolder called CISP310, if I remember correctly, and it should be here. Oh, I guess not. Maybe it's inside subfolder called processor, and then it is under there. So I just use a lot more levels of folder structure, of where I put things, because I got tons of stuff in my file system. So without using a lot of subfolders, things can be lost very quickly. So where you put your file is entirely up to you, okay? Yeah, but you have to remember the current working directory in this case is the tilde symbol, which is the same thing as the home folder. So this is basically exactly the same thing as, this is the home folder in Windows, but in Linux, the home folder is simply known as the tilde symbol. So this is where I can find the jar file. I can start logisim just like this, but I want to replicate exactly what I did in Windows. So now I have to specify the test driver circuit. So I'm not exactly sure where I put that. I think it is still inside documents CISP310, but now I have to look into what stuff I have here. That may not be where I can find that file. Okay. Nope, that's not where I can find it. So I have another subfolder called 310. And in here, we have test driver. But it's not the same test driver that I use in the system. So let me just do something off screen real quick. And we'll end up with that file being there. So give me a second here, because I'm using a screen that you cannot see to get this part done. So I'm basically signing in to Canvas right now and do exactly what I did, except this time I'm doing it on the Linux side. So this way I can also show people who are using Mac OS or Linux of how to do this. All right, so we got to do this share folder. Oh, right, I have to create the empty thing too. So give me a second and I will be able to do it. All right, first thing first, let me just go ahead and create the empty thing. And this is my logisim. There we go. So this is the input pin, and I would use the input pin from here and the output pin from here. And also remember the attachment point are very specific. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're only making connections between these 2 points. And we can also select both pins and turn them from 1 bit to 8 bit at the same time. This is a pretty nifty feature because you don't have to do one at a time. And now we save the file. into a folder. So that's not the folder I want to save it to. I want to save it to 310. And we want to save it here. Okay, so we'll save this as nan2.circ. And yes, go ahead and overwrite it. All right, so I have just recreated the circuit file. And now we can make a copy of that circuit file. But I also need to download test driver on the Linux side. So let me get to that file first. All right, so I just saved the file to the temp folder. So let me go back to the command line. And so let me show you what to do, in Linux or Mac OS. Instead of dir, we have ls, and I'm looking at the temp folder. The temp folder has a slash in front of it because it is not in the current working directory. In this case, the current working directory is the tilde symbol, which means we are now in the home folder. The temp folder is directly under slash because it's a folder under the root folder, and that's why we start with a slash here. And remember, in Linux and also in Mac OS, we use / instead of a backslash, but they serve the same purpose. And now we want to find the test driver, and it is indeed over there. So that's good. So now I think we are ready to run the whole thing. There are a few ways you can do this. Okay, this is another way of doing it. Is you can start a Logisim and direct it to the test driver circ file. Now you might remember that I have not made a copy of nan2 into reference at this point. It's not 100% necessary, but it's a nice thing to do. It avoids what I'm going to show you right now. So when I press the enter key, it will start up Logisim. Let me move Logisim into your view or the complaint that it has. So it's complaining that the file reference.circ is missing. So right now, it will give me a file navigator like this. And I need to go find the file that I want to use, as reference.circ. So that file is under my home folder. So now I have to navigate to the home folder under my name, which is tag 1080p, under CISP 310, and it's nan2. So now I can do the select, and then Logisim starts up. Let me put it into your view, like so. And it's basically the same thing as in the other one. So when I clock it, it will basically mirror whatever is in data in to data out, which is the incorrect behavior. So once again, I want to run this on the command line instead of using the GUI mode, but there's one difference. So the one difference here is I want to save the file first. Because if I don't save the file and I try to run it on the command line interface, it's going to ask me, hey, where's reference.circ? Oh, by the way, you can use this file instead of reference.circ. So I'm going to have to do the whole thing again if I do not save. Now, if I save, then the file, test driver.circ, will now remember, oh, so we are not supposed to use reference. We're supposed to use nan2. So now it understands the next time I do this, it won't ask me where to find reference.circ because it understands that we are supposed to use nan2 instead of reference. And it also knows where to find nan2 in this case, because we just told Logisim where to find the file to substitute reference.circ with. So now I can close the GUI mode, and now I can run it in the command mode. Oh, this is Windows, and this is Linux. There we go. So I can run this in the command line mode, which basically is the same way as running in GUI mode, except we have to specify -tty table, like so. Press the enter key, and it gave me exactly the same result as the Windows version now. So it's the same thing in Mac OS. Now, there's one thing that I need to let Mac OS people know is don't try to put anything under desktop. Okay, nothing under desktop. I think under documents is the same thing. So those two folders inside the home folder are special. Logisim does not seem to be able to look into any subfolder or files in desktop or documents. So my advice is if you're using Mac OS, do not put things, oh, okay, kept changing to the other window. Let me switch back to here. So if you're using Mac OS, don't put anything under documents and do not put anything under your desktop, because any subfolder or any file inside desktop or documents cannot be easily seen by Logisim. So what you want to do is do what I just did here, is to use a CISP 310 as a subfolder that is directly under the home folder. That will make sure that Logisim can see those files. I think downloads is the same way. So if you stash things into the downloads folder, it may or may not be visible to Logisim in Mac OS, because Mac OS has a lot of protection going on. So it doesn't, it's trying to prevent, some third-party app to be able to access your sensitive folders, such as your desktop and documents. And I cannot remember whether downloads is one of those folders or not. But to be safe, I think it is best to set up a subfolder of CISP 310 that is separated from desktop, documents, or downloads. All right, so one more thing before I end this particular video. If you do not know where your current working directory is, you can use a command called pwd, which is print working directory in Linux or Mac OS, and it will tell you the actual path to your current working directory. So because we are using we see the tilde symbol here, we're in the home folder. This is the actual home folder. So instead of using users in Windows, it's using home in Linux and also in Mac OS, as opposed to in Windows, it's using users as instead of home as the parent folder of all the user directories. All right, so I hope this is a useful presentation for those of you who want to learn how to use the command line interface. And if there are any additional questions, feel free to email, and I can see if I can make another video to show you how to use the command line interface, because I think it's a good thing to learn how to use the command line interface. It will help simplify things down the line, even though it would seem like an unnecessary and difficult thing to work with at this point of time. I'll see you on Thursday.